So today's reading is taken from Songs of Songs 3 1 to 5. Upon my bed at night I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. I called him, but he gave no answer. I will rise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. The sentinels found me as they went about in the city. Have you seen him whom my soul loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her that conceived me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the wild does, do not stir up or awaken love until it is ready. This is the word of God for the people of God.
You may be seated. Good morning, church. So we are in the midst of a series on the Song of Songs, and we've been looking at this collection of love poems, and it's important to remember that this is just a collection of love poems. There's not a full narrative throughout the text, and so as you're looking at these collections, what is most helpful usually is to look at themes that move throughout the text. And so we're going to continue doing that, and today we're going to talk about a theme that ties into one of my favorite books. One of my favorite books in all the world, but definitely my favorite book about love, is this little book. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called The Little Prince. If you heard it and you read it, you have to love it. I've never met anyone who read it and was like, meh, right? So I encourage you all, go get it. I have an entire shelf at our house, in our bookshelf, dedicated to The Little Prince. I have like 6 different versions of it there. I have a little a mat that it goes on. I have a picture drawn by one of my students of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He's the author of the book. I have art made by our very own Ashley Bostanek. It's up there should be. If you don't have an Ashley Bostanek original, you're not as cool as me. And so I love this book. The book is about a little prince, a guy who lives on this tiny little planet, right? And he's got 3 volcanoes. One of them is extinct, right? It's just this little tiny planet that you can see sunsets. If you just take a couple steps, you can watch the sunset over and over and over again. And one day, a plant starts growing, and it's not the normal plants that grow on his planet. And so he watches this plant develop, and this plant grows and it becomes a rose. And the boy loves the rose. The boy takes care of the rose. They get into this rhythm of him watering his rose, of him caring for it. Every night when it gets chilly, he puts a little glass over the rose. He loves the rose, and they talk and they watch sunsets together. They fall in love, right? However, things are not perfect. The rose is a tad bit prideful, as roses tend to be, right? The rose cares a lot about its beauty. The rose is also a little bit needy at times. The rose likes to get attention by faking sickness. Right? And for the boy to come over and care for him. And eventually, these thorns, these annoyances grow in the little boy's heart, in the little prince's heart, and he decides to leave. He gets fed up and he says, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here. And he goes on this adventure where he learns about life, about grown-ups, and most importantly, about love. At one point during the story, he lands on Earth, and he's walking around, and he sees this garden full of roses. And see, his rose had always told him that she was the only rose in all the world. And so he sees these roses. He says, my rose is just like all these roses. And then he goes on, and he meets a fox. And this fox teaches him about love. And the way they talk about it is through this idea of taming, right? That you tame one another, right? When you are in love. You get into these rhythms that bind you to one another. And this is where this quote comes in. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. To you, I shall be unique in all the world. And so after teaching the little prince about love, the fox says, go back to that rose garden and look at it again. And so the little prince goes back to the rose garden, And he sees all these roses and he realizes they're nothing like his rose. They're not unique in the way she is. They don't have 4 little pointless thorns like she does. They don't cough to get attention like she does. And then we get into this point where the little prince realizes he's made a mistake by leaving his rose. And he becomes desperate to get back to her. You see, this ties into a theme in the Song of Songs, this theme of seeking and finding, of losing and seeking. The reality of love is that it is not always this abundant, joyful togetherness, right? That there are times of separation due to different reasons, right? And so I want us to look at 4 different texts in Song of Songs this morning and look at how this theme of losing and seeking and finding develop through it. Our first one is Song of Songs 2, 3 through 7. And it says this: "As an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his intention toward me was love. Sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. Oh, that his left hand were under my head, and that his right hand embraced me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and the wild doves, do not stir up or awaken love until it is ready." Song of Songs 8, 1 through 4. "Oh, that you were like a brother to me, who nursed at my mother's breast. If I met you outside, I would kiss you, and no one would despise me. I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother, and into the chamber of the one who bore me. I would give you spiced wine to drink, the juice of my pomegranates. Oh, that his left hand were under my head, and that his right hand embraced me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up or awaken love until it is ready." Here, we've been talking about how love, passion is powerful, right? And because desire is so strong within us, it needs to be met with wisdom, right? And that's what chastity is. Here we see this theme of intense desire being met with separation, right? The lover is expressing this deep desire and then saying, "Oh, that his right hand were under my head. Oh, that his left hand would embrace me." Over and over again, there's this theme of, I have this strong desire, but it cannot be met because there is a separation, right? And then there is this warning, this wisdom that is offered to the younger generation, to the community, to be careful not to awaken love or stir it until the time is ready, right? There is this warning offered, something about the power of desire and absence leads the lover to offer a bit of wisdom to those who are younger. The strength of desire means that we must be, if we are going to open that can of worms, if we are going to engage ourselves in this loving, committed intimacy, this sexual desire, it means that we must be able to deal with times when that passion wells up and is unmet, right? This is a wisdom that Song of Songs is offering to the younger ones, saying that if you are young, if you are lacking in self-control, without a lot of context for life and desire, there is a strong warning here that you should not rush into this level of intimacy, right? There is an age limit here. There is a maturity that is required, a self-control that is necessary if you are going to awaken this kind of intimacy, right? But it's not just this idea that they are separate physically, right? The Song of Songs goes to develop this theme further. Song of Songs 3, 1 through 5, which we just had read for us, but I'll read it again. "Upon my bed at night I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. I called to him, but he gave no answer. I will rise now and go about the city. In the streets and in the squares, I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. The sentinels found me as they went about in the city. Have you seen him whom my soul loves? I scarcely had I passed them when I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I brought him to my mother's house and into the chamber of her that conceived me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the wild does, do not stir up or awaken love until it is ready. What happens when our desire wells up within us? And it's not just that we are separated, but that our lover has gone away. When we cannot find the object of our desire. What happens? There's this, in this text it's tricky because it sounds as if she just can't find him. But there's this one note in here. I called him, but he gave no answer. Here we see that the one who is loved, the beloved, heard the cry of desire and chose not to answer. Because the reality is that love and desire and relationships are not a continual stage of bliss and passion, right? The reality of love in a long-term committed relationship is that there will be times when it is not easy. There will be times when you feel closer, more intimacy than seems possible. And then there will be times when you look at the person lying next to you on the bed and they feel 1,000 miles away. This is real. It happens in relationships. There is times in which you can seek the other, the beloved, and not find them. And here we get another one of those calls to the younger generation. I'm so glad our youth are in here this morning. You get this call to the younger generation to not stir up or awaken love. Right? There's this wisdom that we seem to have missed, right? In the church's handling of sexuality and intimacy, the typical story has been centered around virginity, right? About purity in sexuality means maintaining one's purity by maintaining one's virginity. And then the kids ask, okay, why? Well, because God said so. Right? And that seems to be the end of our story, whereas Song of Songs says maybe there's more that we can offer the younger generation than God said so. Maybe there's more to the story that we should be telling our children, that we should be telling the younger ones. Maybe the story should be that sexual desire, that intimacy is beautiful and fulfilling, but it's also hard, right? It's also painful at times. That until you can both enjoy the intimacy and endure the times of distance, you are not ready. Until you are willing and able, not just willing, but also have the internal fortitude to seek the one you love. When they are lost, you are not ready. There is a level of patience, an ability to walk in faithfulness when it doesn't feel good that is required. And you're just not able to do that when you're younger. That takes development. However, here's what it does call you to. The wisdom that it offers the younger generation is saying, you know what you can do now? You can start patterning yourself into the kind of person that will be ready for that. Because just because you grow older does not mean you will be ready for this level of intimacy, right? There are many old people that are older than me, which seems crazy. I know, kids, I'm as old as it gets, right? But there are people that still do not have the level of maturity. They still have not developed an internal pattern of seeking, of faithfulness that is required of this kind of intimacy. And what ends up happening is what they do is leave pain and hurting in their wake. And so I adjure you, O daughters and sons of Jerusalem, to pattern yourself as someone who will be ready for this level of intimacy. Someone who is not driven by their sort of urges, but rather is self-controlled and able to be faithful even when it hurts. even when it is painful. You see, this poem in Song of Songs 3 ends with the lovers finding each other, right? But that's not always as easy as it seems. And in fact, Song of Songs gives us one more poem in this theme, and it's the most heartbreaking part of the song. It comes from chapter 5. It says this: I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is wet with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. But I had put off my garments. How could I put them on again? I had bathed my feet. How could I soil them? My beloved thrust his hand into the opening, and my inmost being yearned for him. I arose to open to my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, and my fingers with liquid myrrh. Upon the handles of the bolts, I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned and was gone. My soul failed me when he spoke. I sought him, but did not find him. I called him, but he gave no answer. Making their rounds in the cities, the sentinels found me, and they beat me, they wounded me, they took away my mantle, those sentinels of the walls. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, tell him this: I am faint with love. This poem gets a little bit harder, because in this poem we see one of the realities of long-term committed relationship, and how sometimes you're just missing each other, right? It begins with the lover seeking the beloved, right? He's knocking at the door. He's calling to her, right? I slept, my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is wet with dew and my locks with the drops of night. She is being pursued. He wants to be with her. There is an intimacy desired. And then she says, but I had put off my garments. How could I put it on again? I had bathed my feet. How could I soil it? These excuses sound so silly. That's because they are, right? Like anyone who's actually been in a committed relationship for a long amount of time, they know this poem, this song knows what it's talking about, right? There are times in which you miss each other. There are times in which your beloved, your other, is making overtures towards you. But something inside of your heart, there's this internal laziness, this internal slothfulness to turn toward them, to open that door. There are these excuses that can run in our head that make no sense, right? God, is this something I do so often? When Aaron and I get into a fight or something's going on, I can turn into a stubborn mule, and I'll have these ideas of why I can't turn toward her that at the time seem completely reasonable, right? In the moment, I'm like, yeah, no, I apologized first last time. Right? Or I go into the classic thing that we always tell our kids not to do. Well, she started it. Right? And I get so stuck in that moment that I fail to see the broader thing that is going on. I fail to see this relationship that is more than just this moment. I fail to see beyond my current emotional upset, right? Well, I've already changed to get in bed. I don't want to talk about this, you know? I've already done my chores for the day. I don't need to deal with this. There's an internal laziness that comes. And the Song of Songs is calling us to hear our beloved's desire. Goes on, because then eventually the lover starts to hear and starts to turn. My beloved thrust his hand into the opening, and my inmost being yearned for him. I arose to open to my beloved. I arose to open to my beloved. Not right away, right? But eventually she got there. Eventually she was like, you know what? I do need to go to him, right? I hear it. And she goes to him, and what happens? I open to my beloved, but my beloved had turned and was gone. My soul failed me when he spoke. I sought him, but did not find him. I called him, but he gave no answer. She turned to go meet the beloved, but the beloved now was gone, right? They each took their turn being lost to one another. And here, notice, in the previous one, in chapter 3, when she went out, she asked the sentinels where her beloved was. The sentinels were on her side. But here, notice this, making their round in the city, the sentinels found me. They beat me. They wounded me. They took away my mantle, those sentinels of the walls. Here, it seems like the community is against her finding her love. There are forces working against her, seeking out her beloved, right? She wants to find him, but cannot. And there are obstacles in the way. Sometimes it is hard to find one another. Sometimes, it doesn't matter if you've been married for a year, if you're just, moving toward that commitment, or whether you've been married 73 years. Sometimes it can be hard to find one another. Sometimes it seems like there are things that are getting between us and our beloved. Sometimes we seek and don't find. And here's the hardest part about this poem, is it does not end with them finding each other. It ends with another call to these daughters of Jerusalem, but here it's not a call to give them advice. It's not a call to offer them some wisdom. It is a hurt lover's plea for help. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, tell him this, I am faint with love. The poem ends without them being reunited, and it ends with the lover beaten, laying on the street, too tired to continue her search, and calling out for someone to help. If you see him, tell him, I am faint with love. We like to idealize in our culture the beginning parts of love. We love movies about people falling in love, right? We don't make movies about people falling out of love in the midst of their marriage and fighting to keep it. Those movies don't often get made, right? We love the idea of this butterfly, this season of being impassioned and drawn to one another in this deep way. We don't like necessarily the stories of how hard it is to maintain a committed relationship. And that gives us a wrong view of what this is, what this thing we're working toward as lover and beloved actually is, right? Song of Songs is telling us that lifelong love is not a love that never gets lost, but a love that is sought again and again and again. The aim of what we're doing as human beings when our hearts unite, when we come into this committed relationship, the aim there is not that we will never get lost. It will happen. But what distinguishes this young, immature love that the author is saying, don't stir this up if you can't handle it. What distinguishes that from the more mature level of love is not that it never gets lost, but that it is sought again and again and again. We must seek our beloved continuously. And we must be willing to be found. It goes both ways. We must be willing to seek our beloved, right? This is one of the things that my wife, you're not when you're preaching, you're not supposed to make yourself the positive, the protagonist of your story, but I'm going to. This is one of the things that my wife and I have done right. And it was advice given to us by our pastor when we first got married. And the advice was that as you enter this, seek things together. You're going to change, but as much as you can, try and change together. And so my wife and I, since we've gotten married, we've read books together, right? We've set our hearts on the same things. We've discussed what it is we want our life to look like, right? We wanted our home to be a place of quiet and of peace. And so we've organized our home in such a way that that is what, again, we've grown in that together, right? We must be willing to seek each other and seek each other's desires, right? And it's not easy. You get lost sometimes. Sometimes, if you're like me, you get lost within yourself. And your beloved's knocking at the door and you don't know how to answer because you don't know where you are. And the key is to be the type of lover that keeps seeking. Because as this poem teaches us, sometimes it feels like it will never end, like you'll never find the other. This poem ends without resolution, without closure. Lifelong love is not a love that never gets lost, but a love that is sought again and again and again. Lifelong love is a love that cares more about reuniting than it does about why you were separated. You'll notice there's not a point in these texts where the lover says, "Where'd you go? Why didn't you open the door?" It just seeks to be reunited. This is the kind of intimacy we should strive for. To be sought, to be found, to seek, and to find. We've been talking about how Song of Songs is a text that is very obvious in that it has meanings. It doesn't just have one meaning, it has meanings, right? And we've looked at how this story of a lover and beloved mimics the way God loves his people, the church, Israel. And this is one of those themes that are most obvious, right? And this is where the life of being a human mimics our relationship with God also, because man, how often does God have to seek us because we've been lost, right? Doesn't matter. It's not like once you get baptized, everything's perfect and fine and you live in this continual intimacy with God. No, we get lost. We are sometimes hear God knocking at the door and we're like, nah, I don't want to answer, right? This mimics our relationship with God, and in both we can learn what it means to be faithful in the other. In our relationship with God, we can learn what it means to be faithful in our committed relationships, and in our committed relationships, we can learn what it looks like to be faithful toward God. To be people who seek what our desire, to seek our beloved, and to be someone who can be sought, right? Someone who's able to put down the walls so that someone can seek them. I know that for me, there have been times where I have not wanted to make that turn, that internal turn toward God, turn toward the beloved. And learning to have that fortitude, to have that willingness to open ourselves is not easy. Oftentimes, it's not easy because we didn't listen to the wisdom of the song, and we did awaken those desires too early, and there is pain and there is hurt from opening ourselves to someone and it not being met, right? Or there are times where we opened our hearts toward God and didn't get what we wanted or expected, and so there's pain there. And the song teaches us to not get stuck in our lostness, to not get lost within ourselves, but to seek and to find. And this is where it doesn't matter where you are in your relationship with the Lord. It doesn't matter if God has been knocking at your door. God is not one who turns away. And every week we get to this point in the service. It's a center point of our service where God is knocking again. God is inviting us to an intimacy with him. And it is through his table that every week God offers us a place where we can be found, a place where intimacy is present. As I often quote, Dietrich Bonhoeffer once said that we must seek Jesus where he can be found, in his body and in his blood. And every week they are an offer.